You're watching Byline Wilmington on CBS 10 WILM. Here's your host, Don Ansell.
We're back. Our guest for this segment is our pick for the most interesting local politician of 2010, newly elected New Hanover County Commissioner Brian Berger. Commissioner Berger.
Good to be here, Don.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, when we called and asked you to be on the show as our pick for the most interesting local politician of the year, what was your response?
Well, I welcome any opportunity to talk with you, other members of the media, and the public, because an informed electorate is a good electorate and good for the community.
I mean,
so how could I possibly say no?
You go, do you like being labeled interesting?
Well, this is probably the first time that's ever happened. I don't usually get that label.
That's not a tag that...
It's definitely also interesting following someone like Ben McCoy, who's been a very effective and controversial
Well, you ran for the commission, or before you ran for the commission this past time, you ran for office 2 other times. Not much success in those other 2 runs. And you mentioned in the Star News in an interview that the run for commission was the first time you ran seriously. What did you mean by that? Well,
I'm a very principled person, and I put principle and trying to do the right thing above party and above personal profit and above some of those other things that guide other elected officials and candidates for office. So when I ran previously, I ran as a libertarian because I had some...
You ran on principle and not to win?
Yeah, I knew running as a third-party candidate that I most likely would not win. Third-party candidates rarely win.
So you changed party affiliation and became, ran as a Republican?
I changed back to Republican, which is where I had started and where...
So why did you change to Libertarian after you were a Republican?
To send a message to the Republican Party that it needed to return to its traditional principles of limited government and limiting taxing and spending, which it had gotten away from during the Bush years. And I thought that by stepping away from the party, that if enough people did that, party leadership might get the message. And
so do you think going back to being a Republican, a registered Republican, helped your effort in this last election?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at how Republicans fared, certainly it was a good year to be a Republican.
I also read in the Star News interview with you.
Don't believe everything you read in the Star
Well,
News.
this was a post-election interview, and right after the election, where you criticized the editors of the paper for refusing to acknowledge what was in the best interests of the taxpayers by supporting the status quo at the expense of the taxpayers. I think that was your quote. Was that in reference to the Star News not endorsing you?
No, not at all. It's more a reference to the editorial writers of the Star News who
decide who to support.
But more than that, it's more about issues than candidates or endorsements. They support just about every spending project you can imagine, from the convention center to the Cape Fear Pie in the Skyway Bridge, and then they'll talk about a candidate being a fiscal conservative when they have no concept of what being fiscally conservative means. And I have some concerns about the ties of the editorial staff to certain organizations like the Committee of 100, which of course is famous for trying to bring Titan here. So I think those types of things raise questions.
Well, they also brought Verizon here.
If you go back 5, 6, 7 years,
I mean, Titan's not their only.
That's a long gap, 7
but
years.
But anyway, what is your suspicion about the connection between the Star News editorial staff and the Committee of 100?
Well, they're just not inclined to support truly fiscally conservative candidates, and myself being one, they've been
do you think
unfairly and I would say malicious in some of the things that they've written about me. In fact, the only time I think they've even mentioned me by name is to criticized me for
Well, they did
a plagiarized letter that an opponent of mine wrote, and I think that's perhaps the only time they've even mentioned my name.
The interview that I was referencing was a one-on-one. I think they gave you written questions and you gave them written answers. You've had some pretty good coverage, front page a couple of times since your election.
They've had some great, and they do have some great reporters. Pat Gannon is a fantastic reporter, and he's now in their Raleigh bureau. And I can't say enough good things about Mr. Gannon. But as far as the editorial staff goes,
well, they're an opinion.
Yeah,
their opinion,
and they're members of certain organizations that I have disagreements with on things like the Cape Fear Pie the Skyway Bridge, and I think they take that out on me and others who they disagree with.
All right, let's talk about other criticisms you've had about the New Hanover County Commission, charges of corruption. Prior to your election, you charged that members of the commission were party to corruption. There's been turnover in members of the commission. Do you think that any current members of the commission have engaged in corrupt activity?
Well, corruption is a very broad area, ranging from everything from cronyism to taking $100,000 cash and sticking it in your freezer. There's a very wide range. So I certainly, during the campaign, did not accuse any members of the board of being corrupt, but there are certainly instances like the ABC board and the appointment process to various boards that is not corruption in the sense of bribery or anything to that extreme, but is having a harmful effect on our community, has given...
Was it more negligence than corruption, would you say, in those instances?
It could possibly be negligence, but
I think
it goes a little deeper than that to more cronyism and appointing the same people to boards and then rotating those people to other boards when their terms have expired. And it's clearly time for reform, and I think most of the electorate agrees with that.
You've been an outspoken opponent of Titan building that mega cement plant here in Castlehane. What was your reaction to their refusal of government incentives which will speed up the process of developing the facility?
Well, I think Titan is emblematic of a bigger problem, which is our approach to economic development here in the Cape Fear region.
Why are you opposed to? It wasn't the government incentives that fueled your opposition?
Oh, I absolutely oppose the incentives for Titan. I think they would have paid to come here. Why we were offering to pay them is beyond me. I mean, that just...
But was that your only reason for opposing?
There are health, environmental, other concerns. I'm not an expert in those areas, but obviously we've all heard a lot of and received a lot of information about some of those concerns.
So environmental issues also fueled your opposition. One of the biggest issues you've railed against was the formation of the Cape Fear Public Utility Authority, and you made it clear that you want to be appointed to that board. Will you be?
I already have been.
You have been.
First meeting is coming up in a couple weeks, and
who made that decision? Who appointed you?
The appointments to boards is done by the 5 county commissioners get together, and there's 20-something boards that have a member of the county commission on them, and seniority plays a role in that.
What do you want to accomplish? Because you've been so critical of the formation of the utility board, how they've operated. You've been in opposition to almost everything they've done, their methods. What do you hope to accomplish on that board?
Well, certainly I would be lying if I said that I've taken a micro-managing approach to everything they've done. But looking at the big picture, the big problem with the authority is it's created based on a plan that was faulty to begin with. And So that's where my criticism started, is with that plan. And now that that plan has been put into action, what we've seen happen is some of the red flags that I and a few others in the community raised, now that's become reality. And we have to solve those problems without continuing to have...
So it's not going to go away. The utility is not going to go away. You'd like to help reform it?
Reform that could possibly include privatization. That remains to be seen how feasible that would be. It's a very complicated matter because it involves state laws that would have to be changed to bring about a lot of reforms. But I think right now there is finally a desire broadly throughout the community, the realization that it has to be reformed. We can't continue on that path. So that's the first step now, is that realization is finally there that we have to fix the utility.
What's your evaluation of their executive director, Matt Jordan, and how the operation is running?
I can't at this point speak to Mr. Jordan's performance. I know there was a lot of criticism about the bonus he received, but I look more at the directors, the board, because it's the board that really sets the policies and the tone, and I see Mr. Jordan as merely carrying out the decisions, the policies that come from the board. So
well, we'll be watching, and hopefully you'll come back and give us more. We're out of time.
It's one
right
of those
now.
things. Be careful what you wish for, because you just might get.
Thank you, Brian Berger.
Thank you.
Next week, you'll want to stay tuned. She's a lifelong educator, a civil rights activist, an honoree from Star News Lifetime Achievement Award. Now she's penned her autobiography. Bertha Todd will be our guest, with her editor, journalist, Rhonda Bellamy. That's next week on Byline.
Thank you, Doc.
You've been watching Byline Wilmington on CBS 10 WILM. Join us every Sunday morning as we explore the issues that concern you.